If you did not pass a Micro1 AI interview, the first question is usually, can I try again?
Right. And the confusing part is that people often mix two different questions together. One is whether you can retake the same role. The other is whether you can apply to a different Micro1 role.
Exactly. So today, let's talk about both situations, what you should check first, and how to prepare better before your next attempt.
Yeah, I think that immediate aftermath is where things get so messy for people. Like, you finish the interview, you wait for the outcome, and then you see that status screen that just says, did not qualify.
Right, and panic absolutely sets in for a lot of people.
100%. It feels like a door just slammed shut. I know a lot of highly skilled professionals who immediately jump to the worst case scenario.
They assume their entire profile is somehow blacklisted, which is, it's so common.
Exactly. Like, well, I messed up, I'm banned forever.
And that reaction is, completely understandable. I mean, when you put effort into something, a rejection feels incredibly personal. But we really need to separate that initial emotional reaction from the reality of how these platforms operate.
So just to be crystal clear right out of the gate, failing one interview is not a permanent ban.
No, absolutely not. Failing one interview is definitely not a permanent rejection from the platform. You aren't banned, and your profile isn't flagged as, like, a bad candidate.
Okay, that's a relief.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm, say, a senior software engineer with 10 years of experience, and I get a did not qualify message, my ego is still going to take a hit, right?
Oh, sure.
How should a candidate actually interpret that status if it isn't, a reflection of their overall competence?
You have to look at it through the lens of hyperspecificity.
Yeah.
It simply means you didn't meet the highly specific requirements or the assessment criteria or the skill validation for that one singular role at that exact moment in time.
Right, so it's not a general test of your worth as an engineer.
Exactly. These aren't general competency exams. The clients looking for talent have incredibly narrow, precise needs for whatever project they are trying to staff right now.
I like to think of it kind of like a casting call for a movie.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right. Like, you might be an award-winning actor, but if the casting director specifically needs someone who can juggle flaming torches while riding a unicycle, and your audition highlights your dramatic Shakespearean monologues,
You aren't going to get the part.
exactly. It doesn't mean you're a bad actor. It just means you don't fit the exact parameters of that specific scene.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. It's entirely about alignment. You might be brilliant in your broader field, but if your responses during that specific session didn't perfectly align with the exact criteria for that specific listing, well, the system just won't move you forward.
All right, so knowing that it's just a mismatch for a specific role definitely takes the sting away a bit. But once that reality sets in, the urge to act kicks in. My immediate instinct, and I know I'm not alone in this, would be to start clicking around trying to find a loophole.
Oh, the refresh button spam.
Yes. Maybe refresh the page, maybe see if I can just start a new application for the exact same thing immediately. So before someone goes down that rabbit hole, what is the actual first step they should take?
The absolute first step, before you guess, before you click around, before you assume anything, is to check your Micro1 dashboard and check your email.
Just read the instructions.
Yes, you need to look at your current application status and carefully read the literal words provided about your next steps.
Why is that so critical? Because honestly, it feels a bit passive to just sit there and read an email when you want to take action and fix the problem.
Because the dashboard and your email are the single source of truth for your specific situation. Every single listing can be different.
Okay, so there's no one-size-fits-all outcome.
Right. The instructions on your screen might offer a clear next step, or they might simply state that the role is closed to you for now. If you start making assumptions based on what you think should happen, you're really just going to frustrate yourself. So let's say someone has taken a breath, they've checked their dashboard, and they are looking at their options. Let's tackle the first of the two situations we brought up at the start. Retaking the exact same role.
Okay.
Yeah.
If someone just had a bad day, their mind went blank, and they want to try for the exact same job listing or same skill validation again, can they just jump right back into the queue?
Generally, no. You cannot just immediately restart the exact same interview for the exact same role 5 minutes after you didn't qualify.
That makes sense. You can't just keep rolling the dice.
Right. In some cases, there may be a cooldown period.
A cool-down period, so like a mandatory waiting room. But let's clarify this, because rumors spread so fast. People hear things from colleagues and word gets around, and suddenly there's this accepted rule floating around that everybody gets a second chance in exactly 30 days. Is that accurate?
I am so glad you brought that up because that is a massive misconception. You should absolutely not assume a blanket 30-day rule applies to every situation.
So it's not a guaranteed thing.
Not at all. The crucial thing to understand is that the cool-down period, if one even exists, depends entirely on the specific role and the exact instructions provided to you personally in your dashboard or email.
Right, because going back to our casting call analogy, if the movie starts filming next week, there isn't time for a 30-day cool down.
Exactly.
They need to fill the role now, and if you didn't qualify, that specific opportunity is just gone.
Precisely. Sometimes an email might specifically offer a retake after a certain number of days because, well, maybe it's an ongoing need for the client, but other times that option simply does not exist for that particular listing.
So if there is no clear retake option visible on your dashboard or in your communications, what then?
Then you absolutely should not assume you can restart the same interview immediately. You have to accept that this specific listing is closed for now.
Okay, so if the system doesn't give you a button to retake the interview, trying to force it or guessing when you might be able to try again is just useless.
Yeah, it's a waste of energy.
Which naturally leads us to the pivot. If I see a cooldown for my dream role, or if the role is just closed entirely, my next instinct is going to be to look for a slightly different job title on the platform and apply today.
Right.
Can I apply to a completely different role?
Yes, pivoting may be possible. If you see another Micro1 role or a separate job listing that is actively open, and this is the most important part, it actually matches your real verified skills, you can certainly submit an application for it.
Okay, I hear a massive but in your tone there.
Oh, definitely.
It sounds promising, but if I'm eager to get to work, it's incredibly tempting to just go down the list and hit apply on every single open position that looks vaguely related to what I do.
And that is one of the biggest, most common mistakes candidates make when they are feeling eager or frustrated. Candidates should definitely not apply randomly. You must read the role description incredibly carefully before you apply for something new.
Let's explore why that is. If I just fail to qualify for a senior data analyst position, and I immediately apply for a data scientist position that requires the exact same SQL and Python skills, what actually happens?
You are setting yourself up for the exact same outcome. If the new role requires the exact same skills that you just failed to validate in your previous interview, it is not a good idea to apply for it right away. It's highly likely you will not qualify again.
It's like taking a driving test, failing the parallel parking section, and then just immediately walking across the street to a different testing center to take it again without practicing.
Yes.
The outcome is going to be identical because the underlying skill hasn't changed.
That is exactly what happens. You have to be brutally honest with yourself about what skills you are truly an expert in right now. The pivot only works if you are pivoting to something that truly aligns with your actual strengths.
So maybe targeting a different skill set entirely, or finding a role with a different level of expertise.
It's something that better matches your real background.
Okay, so before someone makes a new attempt, whether they are waiting out a cool-down period for their original role or they found a genuinely different role to apply for today, they need to do a bit of an autopsy on their first interview.
They need to review what went wrong.
Exactly. How can a candidate figure out where they fell short? What are the common reasons people don't pass these AI interviews?
There are a few very common practical issues that tend to trip candidates up. One of the most frequent reasons is answering questions too briefly without providing enough detail.
This makes total sense to me, especially in an AI context. If you ask a human interviewer a complex question and give a one-sentence answer, the human might say, "Oh, that's interesting. Could you expand on that?"
Right, a human will prompt you for more.
But an AI assessment is relying entirely on the verbal data you provide up front. If you give a short answer, you're basically starving the process of the data it needs to pass you.
That is the core issue. The assessment needs substance. Another major issue, which is, closely related to being too brief, is not explaining your logic or your thinking process.
Getting the final answer correct is only half the battle, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like being in grade school math class.
Yeah.
Getting the right number doesn't matter if you don't show your work on the chalkboard.
Yeah, you have to show your work verbally. If you are asked how to fix a slow database and you just say the name of the tool you'd use, That doesn't demonstrate your expertise. You need to explain the steps you would take to diagnose the problem, why you chose that specific tool, and how you'd implement it.
And what about the delivery itself? Because talking to a screen can feel very unnatural for a lot of people.
Oh, it does.
Does how you actually speak during the interview matter?
It matters tremendously. A very common trap people fall into is sounding too memorized, robotic, or like they are literally reading a script off their screen.
I can completely understand why candidates do that, though. The pressure is high, they want to be prepared, so they type out their perfect answers in a document beforehand and just read them when a question comes up.
But when you read a script, you strip out all the natural cadence, the intonation, and the spontaneous phrasing that signals true comprehension. You end up sounding like a robot.
Right. And when you sound like a text-to-speech engine, ironically enough, it becomes incredibly difficult for the system to gauge your true fluency and comfort level with the topic.
Exactly. Think about how you talk to a colleague when you're solving a problem together. You don't read them a formal essay, you converse. You need to sound natural.
We also need to address the mechanical side of things. I imagine there are candidates who give brilliant, detailed, conversational answers, but still don't qualify for purely technical reasons.
Oh, absolutely. Experiencing technical problems during the interview is a very real factor.
Like what, specifically?
Well, if you have a poor internet connection that keeps dropping, or if your microphone is staticky and your audio is garbled, if that happens, your responses simply cannot be accurately captured.
Right. If your audio cuts out every 3 seconds, it doesn't matter if you're delivering the most insightful engineering solution of the decade, because it just isn't being recorded.
Technical stability is the absolute foundation. If the system can't hear you clearly, it can't evaluate you. Okay, so let's turn all of this into a game plan. We know the pitfalls: brief answers, hidden logic, choosing a poor role fit, sounding memorized, and bad tech. How do we build an actionable strategy? I like to suggest a simple preparation checklist.
Perfect. What is the most practical preparation advice a candidate can use before they log on for their next attempt?
Well, the very first item is what we just emphasized about pivoting. Always choose roles that genuinely match your real skills. That's the foundation of everything. If you actually possess the skills, you don't have to fake the fluency.
Right. Next on the checklist, prepare a few short, strong examples of your past work or experience. Have these projects fresh in your mind before you even turn your camera on. This is huge for avoiding that terrifying blank mind feeling. When you're suddenly asked for an example of a difficult challenge you overcame, 10 years of career history can just vanish from your brain.
It really does. But if you already know, okay, today I'm going to talk about the server migration project from last year, you can easily pull that into your answer.
And when you deliver those examples, how do you make sure you're hitting the right level of detail?
You need to practice explaining your thinking clearly. A great way to structure this is by using the STAR method.
Most professionals have heard of the STAR method situation: task, action, and result. But using it in an environment where there's no human nodding along to encourage you can feel a bit strange.
It can, but you use it as a self-pacing tool to force yourself to provide detail. You briefly describe the situation you were in. Then you clearly state the task you needed to accomplish.
Okay.
Next, you detail the specific action you took to solve the problem. And remember, this is where you explain your logic and why you took that action. Finally, you share the result of your efforts.
That structure naturally prevents the brief answer problem we talked about earlier. It physically forces you to explain not just what you did, but why you joked and what the tangible outcome was.
Exactly. It keeps your answers organized. And that leads to the next piece of advice. Answer questions directly without getting off topic. It can be so tempting to ramble, especially if you're nervous, or to try and shoehorn in some advanced knowledge that isn't directly related to the question.
But that can actually work against you. Listen carefully to the specific question being asked and provide a direct, focused response. What if the prompt itself is confusing? Because I'd assume that asking an AI for help or clarification might dock points or mess up the flow of the interview. Not at all. That brings up a very important point on the checklist. If a question is confusing, it is perfectly okay to ask for clarification. Wait, really? You can just ask it to explain further. I think a lot of people assume that shows weakness, like you didn't understand the assignment.
It doesn't show weakness at all. It's actually a sign of excellent communication. If you don't fully understand what the interview is asking, politely ask for the question to be rephrased.
That's incredibly reassuring. Okay, let's move to the technical side of the checklist. We talked about audio dropping out. How do candidates ensure they don't fail for mechanical reasons?
You must thoroughly test your microphone and internet connection beforehand.
Don't just assume it works because it worked yesterday.
Right. Do a test recording on your computer using the exact setup you'll use for the interview. Make sure you are in a quiet location with a stable connection.
And finally, let's tackle the issue of sounding robotic or reading from a script. If I shouldn't type out my answers word for word, how do I prepare my thoughts without falling into that trap?
The final piece of advice is to use short bullet point notes to guide your answers instead of reading from a full script.
So instead of writing out a whole paragraph, you just write down a few keywords.
Exactly. Having a few brief bullet points on a sticky note keeps you on track so you don't forget the important details, but it forces your brain to construct the actual sentences in real time.
Because the sentence structure of written text is fundamentally different from spoken language. When you assemble the sentence on the fly using bullet points, you naturally sound conversational.
You do. It allows your actual professional confidence to shine through. If you follow this checklist, choosing the right role, preparing examples, practicing explaining your thinking, answering directly, asking for clarification, testing your tech, and using short notes, you will be in a much stronger position.
It really is about controlling the controllables. You can't predict every single question, but you have complete control over your physical setup, your role selection, and how you communicate.
That is the perfect way to summarize it. Preparation reduces anxiety, and when the anxiety is lower, your actual skills become the focus of the interview. So, to bring this all together for everyone listening, if you find yourself staring at a status screen that says you didn't qualify, take a breath. It is not a permanent rejection, and it is not the end of the line. The very first thing you need to do is check your dashboard or your email to see what specific reality applies to you. And remember to keep the two different questions completely separate in your mind. Retaking the same role may or may not be possible depending on any cooldown periods or specific instructions you have received.
Right. And applying to a completely different role is an option, provided it matches your real skills. But you have to be careful to read the descriptions thoroughly.
Exactly. Once you know which path you're taking, review what went wrong. Did you provide enough detail? Did you explain your logic? Was your tech working?
And then take the time to prepare better before trying again. Set up your bullet points, test your microphone, and have your examples ready so you can communicate clearly. Treating the interview like a professional, detailed chat is the best way forward.
If you want more practice questions and simple sample answers for AI training interviews, you can check the workbook linked in the description.